When you use almost 900 horsepower to pull a sled down a track, things are going to break. That's where Truck U steps in to help. Today we're going to take out these broken axles and upgrade them for good.
You know, Bruno, any vehicle with a keg sticking out of the front is cool with me.
The only problem is this one's empty, at least for now.
It won't be later on. Hey, welcome to Truck U. Today we have a purpose-built competition vehicle in the shop. This thing was built with one thing in mind, and it's not going out and getting groceries.
No, this is a professional sled pull truck, and the whole idea is this thing is hooked to a sled, and you want to get that sled moving fast before that weight is transferred on it and buries the truck. The whole idea, you want to get farther than anybody else. You do that, you win the deal.
Sounds pretty simple, right? Just pull that big thing further than anybody else, like you said. And how do you do that? You do that with this. Bam! A lot of horsepower.
Yeah, you know, this thing puts out about 850 horsepower at 1,800 foot-pounds of torque, and the way it does that is through a Cummins 24-valve motor and a turbo that puts out a lot of power.
Now, this truck runs the 8,000-pound 2.6 class, and that 2.6 is 2.6 inches, which is the size of the compressor wheel. I think that's interesting because, I mean, compressor wheels are your whole life, right? And usually, aren't they millimeters? You know,
typically I hear them referred to as millimeters, but in this case it's 2.6 inches. Regardless, what they do is, and how they measure it and determine the class, is they'll check that compressor wheel. So they'll have you pull off this intake. They'll use what they call a go, no-go gauge. They'll slip that inside the front of this compressor housing, and if it fits, it's legal. If it's too big, it doesn't. It's a quick, easy way to regulate everybody, make sure everyone's on the same page.
Now, the sled has gears on that too, so as the sled goes forward and the axles turn on that, it kind of transfers that weight box up, and it gets heavier and heavier as you go. So the higher up on that sled it goes, the harder it is to pull. That sled wants to do one thing, and that's stop this truck. So let's say the truck weighs 8,000 pounds. I don't know which particular sled they're pulling, but they've got them out there weighing up to 65,000 pounds. That's a lot of weight, a lot of horsepower. What could possibly go wrong besides everything?
Yeah, these trucks can come to a screeching halt really quick, and usually the downside of that is you start snapping parts and pieces, and a lot of that goes to the axles. So we need to get this truck up in the air, fix the axles. We're also going to change the gears on this thing, try and give him a bit of a mechanical advantage.
Yeah, we're going to do a little bit of upgrading because this is no different than any other competition that dudes are in, right? Everybody else is changing their stuff and upgrading theirs, so you better change yours if you want to stay in the hunt. So,
well, before we get this thing up on the lift, we need to get some of this weight off the front.
These are like 103 pounds apiece. Right?
103? Oh, jeez.
And we've both had a hernia procedure.
Yeah, and I got a torn bicep, just so you're aware.
We getting old?
We've been old.
There's something happening. I don't know.
So we got this big behemoth up in the air, and we found every floor jack we could find just in case, you know what I'm saying?
And some the neighbors had.
Right, you know, but so this thing's nice up and secure. What we have to do is get the axles out because this thing is under a tremendous load, especially when that sled starts moving and it starts compressing the back end of this thing. It's snapped one or two of the axles. We're not sure yet. We'll find out here in a little bit. But the idea is we got to get the axles out not only to replace them, but we also want to do an upgrade in terms of the differential gears.
Now, another thing that he was dealing with is the fact that the rules changed lately and said you could run a 35-inch tire. So that's what everybody else is doing. He's still on the 33s. He wants to go to a 35 to have a bigger contact patch on the ground for better traction. But like you said, if he's going to do that, he's going to have to swap out some gears.
Yeah, so right now he's sitting on 410s, and he wants to go up to a 488, which will compensate for those tires and also give him a bit of a mechanical advantage. Now,
let's talk about gear ratios for just a second, because a lot of people think, man, that sounds so complicated, and it's really not, but you hear a lot of numbers. So think about it like this, a 410 gear versus a 488. Okay, a 410 gear means that drive shaft spins 4.1 times and the wheel turns once. A 488 gear spins almost 5 times and the wheel spins once. So that's about a 25% gain. All right, so the engine, sure, it's got to spin a little faster, but it's a lot easier to get those wheels going. Think about it back in the days when you used to ride a bike. Pretend you're riding a 10-speed, pulling a weight behind you. It's a lot easier to take off in first gear than it is in 5th, 6th, or even higher, right?
Yeah.
So that's your 2-cent tour on gear ratio. Back here in the rear end, we've got a Dana 80. It's a full float axle, which for us means to pull the axle shafts out, you don't have to take off the wheels and tires. That's pretty nice. You just undo 8 bolts on each end and the shafts slide right out. That way we can get at this ring gear. Now before we pull this out, we've got to take off these bearing caps. Now here's where things get pretty important. You want to make sure each one of these goes back on the exact same way that you took it off, because it's machined specifically for that axle. So if you mix these two up, they're not going to work right. Also, when they machine these things, sometimes they make a marking like they did here. So you got a little X right there and a little X right there, and those things line up. So that way you can put this back together just like it came apart. Ooh, that one was on there good. All right, now these are shimmed to the outside, so as we pull this out, we just want to keep track of where the shims are, because even though we're changing out the gear on that, it's spaced out pretty good. So when we put the new gear in, that'll help us line it up, and that's a good place to start. You good?
Yep.
All right.
So the ring gear is out of the way, now we need to get the pinion gear out, but before we can do that, we need to remove this drive shaft enclosure. What this does is it acts as a safety measure, because if the drive shaft goes, or these U-bolts, or that pinion gear, you want to try and contain things. I can tell you firsthand, I've been on the bad side of when a drive shaft is gone and things get ugly quick. You're talking 8,000 RPM, stuff is moving fast, and something lets go, it's going to find a home, and it's not going to be pretty, the end result. So this tries to contain the damage and keep things from tearing up the bottom of the truck or actually coming through it. I've seen that happen too, and it gets ugly quick. So we got to get these U-bolts out, get the drive shaft off, and then we can get the pinion gear out and start assessing the damage. A good time for us to take a break, and then we can check out all these broken parts.
This 1979 dually was in rough shape when Kevin first saw this field find. He bought it for $100, and he fixed the bed floor with a sheet of plywood just to get it on the road. Over the years, the engine and 3-speed transmission were rebuilt, and the truck kept on running. One thing led to another, and the idea for a 1-ton dually began. In order to turn the idea into reality, Kevin needed a ton of parts from LMC Truck. Inner and outer front fenders, bed sides, rear swing arm suspension, and a lot more. The truck may have taken 9 years to complete, but it will never end up as a trailer queen. Check out this custom dually restoration or share your truck journey at lmctrucklife.com. So we go from dually to dually. And Bruno, this is interesting to me because as a kid, sled pulls were my first exposure to the four-wheel drive world. My dad would take me to these. I grew up in Stuart, Florida. We'd go down to the West Palm Beach Auditorium or over to the South Florida Fairgrounds, and we'd go to the shows and go through the pits. I would take pictures with every single truck, meet the drivers, hang out in the stands. And what I remember as a kid, 8 to 10 years old, I would listen to that announcer talk all day long, right? And I would think, man, this guy talks a lot, right? Who can make a living doing that? And then, lo and behold, all this, right?
You know, that fills in a lot of gaps, answers a lot of questions for me about you.
It does.
You know, I wasn't ever wanted to be an announcer growing up. I didn't focus on the announcing itself. I focused on the power, the horsepower,
sure,
all that stuff going on. But for me, it was about blacktop. But, you know, there's a lot of similarities there. And usually when you talk about a lot of horsepower, there's a lot of carnage that goes along with it. You know, if with an everyday driver, you talk about a ring and pinion gear, well, it's something that you put in one time and forget about. With an application like this, where you're putting an extreme load on it over and over again, it almost becomes a consumable like a brake pad. So if you look at the gear right here, you can see there are a lot of chatter marks, and we're starting to lose the teeth on this thing, and it's not going to get any better.
No, not at all. I mean, it may hold up for a little while longer, but here's the deal. We know one thing for sure. It's not going to heal itself, right? So it's time to replace it, and we're going to do that with the new ring and pinion from Nitro Gear and Axle.
Now, one of the things we talked about earlier is since we're going in and changing these out and fixing the parts, we're going to step up and change gear ratios themselves. So this is a 410. We're going to a 488. We think that's going to give him a mechanical advantage. He's all for it, especially because he's putting on bigger tires, so this will sort of compensate for it. First things first, though, is we've got to get this ring gear off of this spool before we can go any further. Once we do that, setting up a whole differential is kind of an art form that takes a little bit of time and a lot of patience and a lot of practice to get it just right.
Some reassembly required.
Yeah, right.
So Bruno gets these bolts out of here, and we want to make sure they're good and clean. So we just basically clean them up, and we want to get all the junk out of the thread. So you can run your thumbnail in there and just kind of spin it around all the way down, and that'll get everything out. It'll take a couple minutes, but it's well worth doing. And basically what we can do at this point is kind of inspect these things a little bit too before we put them back in there. Interestingly enough, the first one that I cleaned, I don't know if you can see it on the camera or not, but the threads are smashed up about right there. From about this point on, they're pretty smashed up. So what I need to do is take this, throw it in the die like this, and I'll have to put this in a vise, but basically I'll just work this back in there and I'll recut those threads, and then that way it'll be good when I jam it back in there. Because if I put it back in there like this, we're gonna have a problem down the road. So hopefully I don't find any more like these.
So while Matt's working on the spool and ring gear for the back, it's time to attack the front. Now, he warned us and told us that on this truck there was some redneck engineering that went through, some redneck science, and boom, you take the cover off and you can't help but notice it right here. Now, first thing, let's mention the good. Let's be positive. You've got a ring gear that looks brand new, which is good. We're going to change it anyways, but when you come and look over here at the spider gears, he has welded them all together, and the whole idea, what he was trying to do, is give himself a locking differential. You know, it's an open differential. He locked it up by all the welds, but it's really not the way to get it done. First things first, so this is something that needs to be strong. It's heat treated. Anytime you weld something that's heat treated, you take the heat treat right out of it, so it becomes weak. A weak gear in something putting this kind of torque to it is not going to end well. Other than that, too, you look inside of it and you've got MIG welding with all kinds of slag everywhere. I mean, look at this stuff. It's going to eat up this gear, and this thing is going to be basically a bomb waiting to go off. So what we're going to do is get all this stuff out of the way, and we're going to do it right. We're going to put the 488 ring gear in it. We're going to put a spool in it. This way, all these spider gears, all this redneck science is gone, and we're going to do it right, and we're going to do it right the first time. Now I just need to get this one out of the way. All right, now just like with the back, we've got these bearings and all these shims we want to keep together, so be careful and conscious of that as you take out the chunk. So here is the old front carrier that we took out, the one that had been re-engineered, so to speak, and this is the one we're going to replace it with. This is a spool assembly, and it is going to be a much better option.
So let's take a look on the back side of this old bearing, right? There's a shim. I spoke about this earlier. When you're doing this job, you may have to put things in, take them out, put them back in. You may have to do that a couple of times. Well, the shim's on the back side of a pressed-in bearing. Now that can be a major pain in the butt.
Yeah, so what we're going to do is we'll press off this bearing, and then we're going to open up the ID a little bit to allow us to use it as a mock-up, so when we're setting this one up and going off and on a bunch of times, we don't damage, first of all, the new one, or we don't waste a lot of time pressing off and on. Once we get it all set up, we'll press on the new one, and we are ready to go, and we'll do the same thing for both the front and the rear. Now it's just a matter of using the right tool to get this bearing off.
All right, let's put this baby together.
All right.
You good?
Yep. You know, it's nice having the right tools.
It does come in
handy. Makes life
handy.
a whole lot easier. Hold on, let's flip it.
That's good. Especially when we know how to use it. All right, dude. Hey, I know you asked for the big gun, right? But I couldn't carry that one, so this is going to have to do.
So this is going to have to do? All right, I'll see if I can make it work.
Stand back?
Might have to.
Whoa. Oh.
Got it.
Nice.
This segment of Truck U is brought to you by Seatbelt Solutions, the safest seatbelt money can buy.
Hey, welcome back. So we want to show you guys what we got going on in terms of axles on the front of this truck. Now, what you've got here is your long and short axle, normal deal, and this is actually something I was kind of surprised to see in a professional pulling truck because it's a two-piece long axle design, something you might regularly see in production, but wasn't expecting to see it right here, I'll be honest with you.
It's interesting because, you know, ideally when you're going down the road and you're not using the front wheel drive and you've got an open carrier, the idea here is open carrier and you got a little break in the axle here. So the wheels are just spinning freely, you know, very little resistance, less wear and tear on everything because nothing's spinning around in the axle tube, that's all good. And then when you shift into four-wheel drive, that engages not only the front drive shaft, but simultaneously this little coupler will go over here like that. And essentially that slides over and makes this one solid axle. The only problem is in an application like this, that right there is a weak spot, and that's what we're trying to get rid of.
You know, the weakest part of any shaft is its smallest dimension, so basically you've got a really small dimension right here, especially when you look at a solid shaft like this. So just by getting rid of that weak spot, it's going to be considerably stronger. But what we're going to do, if you remember correctly, we're going to upgrade the axles and go to something bigger. So we got a 30 spline in it now, we're going to 35, and dimensionally you can see that it is much larger. So one to the other, man, we are going like 3 steps ahead, essentially, in terms of strength and durability with this whole new axle assembly.
I don't believe in overkill, dude. I mean,
no, on something like this, you can't do overkill as far as I'm concerned.
Here's how I look at this. This is a pretty complicated thing, and there are guys throughout the world that are very good at it. This is one of those things when you're working on a vehicle, if you don't know what you're doing, sometimes it's better to just get off the wallet and pay somebody that's good at it. Bruno, let's step over here for a minute and take a look at some of the cool stuff that got shipped to us this morning. Now, this is from Merchant Automotive, and they're kind of your one-stop shop, if you will, if you want to do a complete engine rebuild on a Duramax from an 01 to present.
Yeah, what's nice is you can place one single order and make sure you get everything you need to do that engine rebuild. That's really handy for someone who doesn't do this every day, because you might have a tendency to leave something out, like some little O-rings here or some valve seals, and that kind of thing can, not only be frustrating, it cost you a lot of time and cause you to spend a lot of extra money on overnight shipping.
Right.
The other thing being true is with Merchant Automotive, if you need a single gasket or a single part, like a head gasket, you can call and get that from them as well, and it's just as easy.
And they've got all the hardware you need for the job as well.
Right. One of the product lines we use all the time here in the shop comes from Bolt, and basically it is a full locking system for just about any application for your car or truck. One of the nice things about the Bolt locks is the fact that it uses one key, your truck key, to open any one of them.
Yeah, it's neat when you buy it, it doesn't even come with a key. So like you said, Bruno, you put in your truck key, it learns your key, right? Now this is the coupler pin lock. So it's nice and long, so it's adjustable. Boom, you put your trailer down, slide that through there, and then we can put this wherever we need to, right? Boom. Trailer's not going anywhere.
No.
And it's a full line. I mean, padlocks are great. We've got spare tire keys, toolbox keys, hitch pins, you name it, they've got it.
Yeah, and they've got locks for just about any major manufacturer.
Classic Parts of America has these really nice catalogs, and they've got all the parts for older model Chevy trucks going from 1947 to 1998. So the cool thing is, if you're doing a project on an older Chevy truck and you don't know where to go to find certain pieces or parts, these are the guys to look up.
Yeah, these catalogs are free and they are a great resource. Let's say you're looking for like this little retainer clip right here. How do you call a parts store and tell them this is what I need? You'll never get the right part. With these catalogs, you can find all those hard to find parts and pieces. You'll get the right one. You'll get it in 1 to 3 days shipping. You can order online or call their 1-800 number.
Let's go inside the Duplicolor garage. Duplicolor. Yes, you can. In your garage.
One issue that we all have when it comes to keeping our vehicle looking good is black plastic parts that fade out from the sun. You know the deal. When you wash and detail the vehicle, you get the paint looking good, the tires and wheels look great, but this stuff still looks dull. Fortunately now, we've got a fix for that, and with this, we can breathe some new life into this old plastic. You might be looking at everything that we taped off and thinking, man, that looks like a lot of work. Well, don't be intimidated by that. We want to do the job and we want to do it right. See, here's what we can do. If you use any of the other silicone-based cleaners on this plastic, I mean, it's going to look good for a day or two, but as soon as it rains or as soon as you go through a car wash, it's all going to rinse off and it's going to look just like this again. Now, the Duplicolor plastic and vinyl restore coating is made with FadeX technology, which means it's going to last 5 times longer. So bring on the car washes. Bring on the rain. Another thing that we noticed when we got into this project was these wiper blades looked terrible. They had just been beaten up by the sun. So we hit those with some trim paint and those babies look like brand new. Again, this was easy to do and this plastic looks brand new. And with the FadeX technology, we're not gonna have to worry about a rainstorm or a car wash rinsing it all off because it's gonna last and it's gonna stay looking good. For more information about the plastic and vinyl restore coating or any other Duplicolor product, be sure to check out their website.
If you find your diesel truck is bucking or chugging with hard starts and black smoke, you have a problem with stiction in your engine. Stiction happens when burnt oil gums up the internal mechanisms like camshafts and turbos. Virtually all diesels have some kind of stiction buildup. When this problem happens, drivers will add a lubricant, but that only creates a slippery stiction problem. Hot Shot's secret stiction eliminator is a detergent and a dispersant. The detergent removes the burnt oil and varnish, and the dispersant gets it out of your system. Whether you drive a diesel car or truck, Hot Shot's secret stiction eliminator will remove 100% of the stiction from your engine and likely solve that bucking and chugging problem. This tip is brought to you by Hot Shot Secret, powered by science.
Welcome back to Truck U. Today it's been all about giving this truck some upgrades to help it be more competitive out there on the sled pulling competitions, right? So we've got the new gears in, that's going to be a big advantage, and now it's time for an additive. What we're going to do is add the Diesel Extreme from Hot Shot Secret, and we want to get the biggest bang for the buck when we're doing an additive, right? That's exactly what this is all about, because this will actually make the fuel more explosive. You know, when it goes in, this is obviously a diesel, but if you're thinking about comparing this to something, you could compare it to putting a higher octane gas in your gas engine that's set up to handle it.
You know, it happens to be the same stuff that's in dynamite, and that's the kind of power we want, something explosive inside the tank. The other thing that's nice about it is it has a fuel additive inside of it, which is a stabilizer, which will help this thing when it sits a long time between pulls. This thing will start right up.
Now, this particular application calls for 4 ounces, so I got that poured out and I can dump it.
Oh, Matt, you know what? Before you pour that,
What?
Yeah, all right. Well, you know what?
Late.
I never really thought about it, but rules might say that you can't doctor fuel. I mean, is it frowned upon? Is it legal? Illegal? I'm okay with frowned upon.
Look, here's the deal. We told him we were going to get him every possible advantage we could get,
true.
right? Nobody dropped off a rule book. It's not my fault. Rules aren't my strong point. Come on.
You know, next time I'll have to bring a rule book. It's not our problem.
It's not on us.
I'm good with it. So this truck is just about ready for its next competition. We did a big upgrade on those axles. We went from the 30 spline to the 35 spline, which will help a ton in durability. We also gave it a bit of a mechanical advantage. Both those differentials got changed from a 410 to a 488, and that should be a big improvement.
We also got rid of that welded up front end and replaced that with an actual spool, and we got rid of that 2-piece front shaft up there and replaced it with one single shaft. So, you know what would be cool is if at full pull he hits the Dixie horn. That's what I'm thinking, man.
I like that.
Right? All right, I'll be looking forward to a good full report, so we'll see you guys next time right here on Truck U. In the meantime, man, we
got to get this thing going is what we need to do now.
Oh, good call. I forgot about that. How did I forget about that? That's kind of my thing. Turbos are yours, pegs are mine.